What is awakening? I'd like to invite the mind back in to try and maybe explain through a limited means of communicating that what is fully experienced by every human being in every moment of every day through an awakening. You see, the human tries to break things up and investigate in that format. Let's break up life and then investigate that form of life to see what we can find. Awakening is not a component, it's whole. When you say what is awakening, or what actually is awakening, the human tends to think it's the mind you're speaking about, or it's the body, or it's the person. What is awakening? Is it the mind that's awakening? Is it the person that's awakening? Is it the body that's awakening? Is it the soul? Is it the spirit that's awakening? Well, that what is awakening is life. But life has already awakened, isn't it? You know, you have information to say you awakened when your bum was smacked, you know? So therefore, but before you awakened, life was already awake because your parents were alive and your grandparents were alive. So life itself must have taken on an awakening and is still continuing to awaken in every living form that is born. Okay? And that's pretty simple stuff, pretty basic stuff. We look at a spiritual awakening and we say, but that's different because I'm already alive and something has been made me feel more alive than I was before I awakened. So what's that about? And then it leads to this enlightenment, this pure, liberating, overwhelming joy of actually recognizing that I'm alive. Same thing. Each morning through life, it doesn't have to be spiritual, religious. You open your eyes in the morning and you can say it to yourself, I'm awake. But this spiritual awakening seems to be an unusual form of awakening from being awake that leads into this incredible bliss, this incredible joy. So what takes place, you see? Why did some others experience this profound joy? What are they special? Well, let's go back to the beginning because that's the only thing we have. Let's look at science. Science tries to describe the beginning as a Big Bang. Perfectly acceptable theory. Now, in this beginning of the Big Bang, to experience that what banged, becoming awake, had to be something either unawakened or a different kind of wakefulness, suddenly realizing a much more profound and spiritual and religious awakening. So let's take God. So God is awake, but there's nothing to be seen, nothing to be experienced, because he's just simply awake, like we are, simply awake. So there's not that profound joy and overwhelming bliss until God fills up a desire and a need. I'm not happy. I want more. I want to just enlighten this world. I want to give this world life. I want to give the whole galaxy, the universe, life. I want to experience it for myself. I am able to create something that is much more beautiful and loving and incredibly overwhelming bliss and joy, this moment of liberation. So I'll take my consciousness, I'll meditate, and I'll bang. So in this Big Bang Theory, we're not looking at God, we're looking at whatever exploded, had a need to explode, and reveal something from inside that it wanted to experience or reveal. So this Big Bang appeared as maybe one large, massive, full rock that was incredible and exploded into planets and stars and meteorites and black holes and all that stuff. And it's still moving around as if it's more meteorites are coming from this incredible bang that's been going on for centuries and centuries of years. U.G. Krishnamurti puts it beautifully, eloquently. There's only one pulse. That's that Big Bang. That's that moment. Poof. Alan Watts uses a bottle of ink. I think it's a better way of describing it. You take this bottle of ink and you throw it, hurtle it against a stone wall, and it smashes. And the ink falls in different ways. Some of it comes outwards, some trickles down in different qualities, different quantities, different amounts. Some come outwards and disappear into the atmosphere. Some goes left, right, up, down. And then, of course, the glass of the bottle, it shatters in different sizes and pieces and then explodes and lands wherever it's going to land. And eventually, after 3-4 hours, depending on the quality of the ink, the whole experience is still. The Big Bang, that one wakeful moment, is awake. And there's still an experience of that ink drying because the planets are still moving, the meteorites are still falling around, the stars are still coming out and glistening, changing shape, the sun is changing, everything seems to be still moving and adjusting to that because it's consciously alive now. It's like the baby being born. It's still, but it's awake inside the mother's womb. And then, bang, and it doesn't lie still. It keeps moving. But the moment of birth, that traumatic experience of poof, coming out, smack, is that baby being awakened into life. Awakened to say, now, impact. So what is this about? Why the spiritual awakening, you see? Right. There is only one moment. There is only one awakening. There is only the beginning. Now, what happens to U.G. Krishnamurti's one pulse is this awakening of God, Brahman, Atman, Absolute, whatever it is, in its own consciousness. It's so immense, so powerful, so colossal, much more profound and visible than the Big Bang Theory. And a few, like Rumi, have experienced this incredible joy, this incredible love of going back into himself, into this moment, this dehypnosis, this return, this reverse action into that original awakening. And it's unshareable. And even if this speaker that experienced this profound moment wanted to go and knock on science door and say, I can tell you anything you want to know about consciousness. I can tell you anything until you know about how this took place. Who are you? Where's your certificate? What's going on? And I wouldn't do it anyway, because it's an experiential thing that is taking place every moment. You don't have to share it. You are awakening. The reason that you have not experienced this spiritual awakening is because when this one pulse took a shape of continual poo, 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 because one bottle of ink is one smash, and so much ink. But when God awakens, which is an infinite amount of internal godliness, which is that what this is, internal godliness, continually awakening, constantly, continually awakening, spewing out. This ink is so colossal that it's the universe itself has no space to take it all at once. It's a kind of poof, and then so many beings, so many animals, so many planets, so many stars have to disappear to make room for the next poof. So every now and then this new awakening takes place. And it's only those that are in the way, that have put themselves into a position that Rumi put themselves into, that will experience it. Now, you have no idea when you're going to experience it. Rumi had no idea. The speaker had no idea. But in your meditative state, you're waiting patiently. You don't know what you're doing, what you're waiting for, what you're looking for. Same as every other human being, but you're in this internal self-inquiry state, not knowing what's going on. But it's like walking in the wind. Some walk in the wind. Most have their coats on. Jacket, coats, some hats. And this gust comes, and they don't feel it. But if you're naked, oh, Jesus, you're going to feel it. You're going to be awakened. You're going to be awakened to that gust of wind. Everyone around you going, what's going on? I'm freezing. Well, you got no clothes on. Of course you're going to freeze. So you have to be, like, awakening takes place. There's no plan, there's no organized who is going to experience it. You're in the right place at the right time with the right condition, you'll experience it. But you know what? It's an ongoing pulsation. That pulse, and that every time in an awakening, that pulse, initial and first impact from God, poof, turns into reflective poof, poof, and all dies out. And then everything is awakening every moment. You're reminded of your awakening every moment. Everyone is awake. You know, this idea that you have to be awakened. You're awake. How can you not be awake? When you wake up in the morning, first thing you say is, I'm awake. You don't have to say it to yourself. You know. You simply move. The spiritual awakening is that what falls into the pure new movement of awakening and happens to be there. Is it beautiful? Absolutely overwhelming joy. Bliss, Satchitananda. And you are taken to that origin. Well, you're not taken. It's an experience of the original awakening. That is the same. Every awakening is the same awakening. That spiritual awakening. But it's slightly different. Hence why Rumi will talk about it differently. Ramana Maharshi will talk about it differently. The speaker will talk about it. Eckhart Tolle will talk about it. Yuji will talk about it differently. They'll have different effects, different techniques, because every bottle of ink that comes from God is different. Consciousness cannot be the same essence all the time. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita makes up different levels of consciousness, because each individual has a different experience of consciousness. But the spiritual awakening is just a reflection. Everything is a reflection. All that takes place is birth. All that takes place is birth. And some have an opportunity of experiencing that most initial profound beginning, that new awakening. That is exactly the same as every other awakening. There is only one awakening. There is only one God awakening. We are all pertinent to it. We are all examples of it. We are all experiencing it in minuscule ways, whether it's the smacking the child as a baby, whether it's the headmaster throwing a book at you because you fell into a trance. Sorry, sir. Yeah. It's a reminder of awakening. Those that are naked, walking in the wind, that have put themselves into that position, need to be constantly reminded, because God is not happy with those that have went to sleep and have returned not to full sleep, but to that original state that God was. God was not happy when he was awake and not sharing his wakefulness. He's not happy that you're awake and you're not sharing your wakefulness. So there's a constant reminder to wake you up. You're not being yourself. You're not happy. You're not overjoyed. You're not just grateful to be alive. You're following a mind that says, we've no time to listen to our pulse. We've no time to think about the creation, the birth. We've no time to be happy and overwhelmed and joyful, because we've got jobs to do. We've got guidelines to follow. We've got money to make. We've got things, people to impress. We've got an ego that says, I'm taking everyone into this sleep because I'm representing God in its original state. Ego's not bad, you see. You have two levels of experience from God. Simple. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay, yeah. Life's okay. It's alright, yeah. Okay, I'm going to go do a job. I'm bored. Yeah, okay, yeah. And that's okay. But the minute you fall into that sleep trap and you're in this new awakening gust experience, you're going to get a full whack. You're going to be reminded. You're going to get that smack at the bottom when you were a child again. You're going to be reminded that you're awake. And then you suddenly, I'm alive. I'm alive. And everything is alive. I can't believe it. What happened? What happened? I didn't even feel anything. It's just like something I stood up straight and I became alive. I became awake. I became incredibly happy, incredibly moving, incredibly liberated. I experienced emptiness, love, nothingness, non-dual love, consciousness in its purest state. What's going on? You're just lucky. But you have to maintain and contain that, you see. Many saints tell you about the story about the old fool walking about with a loincloth, laughing and giggling everywhere. He couldn't maintain and contain his enlightenment. We have to nowadays, or we get locked up. Yeah, that one's far too happy. That one's far too happy. Why is he happy? He has no money. He has no job. He has no house, no family. We need to lock him up. If he continues like that, we need to lock him up, or we have to shoot him, because that's not acceptable in this ego world. And of course, for that one, it's not acceptable. We're recreating God in two ways. Nice, old, simple, just awake, happy to be here, doing stuff, like creating, participating, being kind, being horrible, being angry. And then we have awake God, who in itself came to life. There is no death in life. There is two qualities of life. There is just life, and there's pure life. There's love in a human sense, and there's pure love. It appears to be spiritual. It appears to be teachers are saying you have to be awakened and enlightened. We're all awake. Just different qualities of wakefulness. Some have to be reminded so that they can, it's maybe for sharing. It's maybe to say that, well, for those who are on the verge of just needing some reassurance about this beginning, just needing reassurance that there's no end, just needing reassurance that we are recycled stuff. Because when the ink dries and the glass is swept up and it's wiped off the wall, it ends up in a cloth or it ends up somewhere beautiful in some sort of recycled pit. And it is made into another bottle of glass and more ink. It's just a recycling pit. But awakening, enlightenment appears to be spiritual, it appears to be connected to spiritual, but it's not guaranteed, it's not for everyone, and it's not selected. It just is what it is. God needs some balance. The ego is so far weighed to one side that God feels itself going back to that. And of course, in nature, it is God going back to that because it's the end of a cycle. The ink that spewed from God, the planets and everything have went whack within and they're coming out again. So that's why there's a resurgence in this spiritual non-dual awakeness. Don't feel as though you've missed out because you lose 7 years of your life being reminded that you're alive. So that is awakening. Life is awakening. God is awakening every day, every moment. It appears to be different qualities, but it's not. It's birth. Everything is being born. Everything is reborn. Everything is born. There's no such thing as end and death. God is the most immortal, infinite, colossal, boundless, limited love. And that's what you are. Sometimes feeling just awake. Sometimes feeling dead when the body goes. Because you're right down back into the pit waiting for that new poof. And you're alive again. There is only life. Awakening within itself. That's the best way. Ignore that last 23 minutes. Life awakening within itself every moment of every day for infinite time. And you will always be there, like you're here right now. Just don't wait for that smack. Just be grateful. Just be grateful for being alive. Just be grateful for small wakefulness moments. Just be grateful. Just be grateful. And you'll live on. Namaste.